Hello, hello, my farmtastic friends. Farmer Phil here again. Well, if you look at the weather forecast, things are looking up. It's looking great. We had our last cold spell earlier this week. That Sunday night, my goodness, minus 22 back home. Anyways, things are looking great. We've got above freezing temperatures during the day and below freezing temperatures at night. You know what that means. It is, you guessed it, pothole season. No, I'm kidding. It's maple season, my favorite time of the year. It's even more fantastic than when the kids go back to school. For me, it's even better than Christmas. I love maple season. Now, I've got all kinds of questions. How do we get the different kinds of maple syrup? We've got the clear stuff. We got the dark stuff. How does that happen? I don't know. Please enlighten me. And the existential question I have is, why is it that when you mix maple syrup and peanut butter together, the peanut butter doesn't get clearer, it doesn't get more liquidy, it gets thicker? Why does that happen? I want to know. In all seriousness, folks, this week's Farm to Food podcast, all about maple syrup, is coming right up. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Farm to Food podcast. I'm Hugh Maynard, publisher of the Gleaner newspaper, the team that brings you this podcast every 2 weeks. The theme of this episode is simply maple syrup. It's an iconic product in Quebec with a long tradition dating back centuries, yet more recently experiencing modernization with vacuum pumps and reverse osmosis machines, while still dealing with the ups and downs of nature, the weather. The high-tech element has transformed the tradition into an industry in order to meet the increasing demand for maple syrup, which has increased threefold since the 1980s. We're going to delve into the ins and outs of maple syrup production when we speak with some maple syrup producers and a nutritionist. And in between, we'll give you the answers to Farmer Phil's questions. Sit back and enjoy the sweetest show in springtime. All right, so I'm talking today with David Hall of Hall Acres Farm in the Knowlton area of the Eastern Townships. He has a maple syrup farm and 300 sheep to keep himself busy, and he's the fifth generation of his family to be on that land. Welcome, David.
Thank you very much for having me.
So you started farm management like I did at McDonald College, McGill University. I didn't have a farm, but you had a farm. You could have gone elsewhere. So what pulled you back to the farm in 1985?
Well, I bought in 85 when I finished at McDonald College. I went to New Zealand for 9 months to kind of have a break. And, well, we worked on farms over there as well, but it was different. And I came home. We'd had an accident on our farm while I was gone. Our hired man got killed in a farm accident. So we were short of help, and my dad and I always got along well for the most part. So, I'd studied, I'm not all that scholarly. I studied at Mac, and farming was what I wanted to do. So I did it. And my dad wasn't feeling the best. So in 1985, he said, look, rather than try and get bigger, why don't I sell you the farm? So I've been on my own account since August 1985.
And when you took that over, it probably was a typical maple syrup operation of buckets and tractors. And now it's scaled up to 23,000 taps, which I know a lot of people have
25,000 now.
25,000 now, okay. And 300 and some odd thousand liters of sap and which boils down to 10,000 gallons of syrup. Yeah. So what was the biggest leap forward when you started to modernize the traditional maple syrup operation on your family's farm?
Well, I got married in 1988, and my dad passed away. So all of a sudden, a lot of the boiling expertise and just manpower So we kind of muddled through the first year in 1989, and we realized that if we were going to keep doing this, because we were pipeline at the time, and we put a reverse osmosis machine in. It was very rudimentary compared to what we have now, but even those ones, it was night and day making syrup. You throw 60 or 70% of the water out. All of a sudden you're not boiling day and night, which was always our problem. We couldn't process it fast enough.
When the sap ran, there was nothing you could do, right? But
that's right. I mean, in buckets, at least you had storage out in the woods. If you had 2,000 3-gallon buckets, you had 6,000 gallons of storage in the woods. And you picked it up when you could. But we live on a mountain, and it just didn't make sense to keep a team of horses around for 20 or 30 days of the year. And we tried it with tractors, but life insurance was going to get expensive. So we put pipeline in on gravity, and some years it doesn't work well at all. And the first couple of years we had it, it worked really well. It ran in the right volume and time, and so it creates its own vacuum. But the downside to all that is when it runs, it's all at the sugar house, and you have to figure out how to handle it. In the first year, I boil all day, and my uncle will boil all night. But just paying a lot of wages for what syrup was worth in those days wasn't worth it. So we bought it, and eventually, by hook and crook, we got electricity put into our sugar house. We ran a couple of years with a generator, which is expensive, but in those days, diesel fuel was 21 cents a liter. So it still didn't hurt quite as bad as like diesel today would be $1.40 a liter. And, we have a standby generator, and it has a 6-cylinder Cummins engine on it, which would probably take a stream of fuel as big as your finger. Before the days of quotas and stuff like that, we gradually branched out through the woods and increased the number of taps we had. Put a better vacuum system in, put a better reverse osmosis in. And, we've just gradually year after year after year been at it. And then my son, who also went to McDonald College, decided that he was going to try farming for a living, and came home, and we went 1 year, and then we had a chance to buy another substantial sugar bush. So this is how we ended up, kind of where we are. Him and my wife and my kids, we're all kind of in it together, and the girls maybe more and for moral support, but they do come when they can on weekends and stuff. My son is full-time.
So you've modernized, you've expanded from the traditional production techniques, but you still have to face the weather, right? Mm-hmm. And we're in an era of climate change, and the seasons often start in February sometimes, not this year. How has that impacted the scale? Because you are a much larger scale. How has the weather impacted that?
The weather changes in 40 years that I've been doing it. The earliest we've ever started boiling is the 8th of February. And in 2014 and 2015, it was around the 30th of March. What worries us more is a huge warm up in March. That's what kills people in our area here. We can still, even if we start mid-March, it doesn't mean the season's going to be a disaster. We have a sugar bush that's, higher. It faces a little bit to the north. It'll keep producing into the end of April.
And indeed, in Quebec, which produces 70% of the world's maple syrup, and half of that is produced in the Beauce.
I had somebody phone me this morning and say, did you guys make any? I said, no, what the hell do you think? But, those guys aren't nervous at all. If you had a really warm sugar bush down in the region that you live maybe they'd start to become a little bit nervous, but probably more than anything else, just because people in our area, they have field work and stuff, we don't want to be making syrup in May. We'd rather get it done with and over with. And
you've got 300 sheep to look after, right? And all the lambs. So
yeah, we lamb we divide it out 3 times in 2 years. So it does spread that part of the work out. You end up with more lambs in the year, but they're not all at the same time.
So production of maple syrup is not the only thing that's been modernized. Also, the whole framework for the market, if you can call it, the strategic reserve. When you took it over, the market was a bit of a Wild West, right? The people driving around with trucks and buying, and there was no business really in maple syrup. It was it really needed to be sorted out, and it has been through the Maple Syrup Producers Federation here in Quebec, which is the only area, again, that has a strategic reserve. Give us a bit of background on that and how you think, as a farmer, how it's contributed to the development of maple syrup in Quebec.
It's stabilized it, in the Wild West, as you call it. Just for clarity, I'm one of the 12 directors of the maple syrup, PPAQ. I represent Montérégie Est. It stabilized it. Buyers would come around and start picking the low-hanging fruit, i.e. the guy that needed the money the most. And, then, when they got that all done, then they go to the next group of people that wanted to sell but didn't need the money. More often than not, if you held your syrup until fall, you got more money. Whereas now it has structure, and when there's too much syrup, collectively, we empty the producer's drums, pasteurize it, put it in our drums, put it in the warehouse. It has a relatively long shelf life. And the year when either the sales go up or Mother Nature doesn't cooperate, we put it back out on the market. You have a quota system, for better or worse, but, personally, I think better. It gives you something to go to financial institutions and say, look, if I produce this amount of syrup, this is how much money I'm going to get. Am I going to produce it every year? No, and then the bankers and the financier and farm credit, they can look through and say, well, this works, this doesn't. And up until now, it's worked. It's given us credibility financially because it's become a capital intensive business.
And also, part of the logic behind the reserve was the problem with maple syrup in the past, long time ago, was that seasonal production was up and down. You couldn't sell to the buyers in the United States if you couldn't guarantee every year you were going to have a supply. So that's also part of it and has really helped expand the U.S. and probably, I guess, increased income with the exchange rate.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the biggest thing that since, 2008 or 9 that has helped is the exchange rate is in our favor. Almost everything to do with maple syrup is fabricated in Quebec. I know the guys in the States right now that are buying equipment, tariffs are having a major impact. Not even a big reverse osmosis machine can cost you $200,000. An electric boiler for it would do a farm my size and a little bit bigger is $250,000. There are eco grants, but you end up paying income tax on that as well. So typical farmer, I'll complain. They give you money, but they want some back.
All that equipment has a lot of aluminum in it as well.
Well, yeah, it's, stainless steel is, there's nobody makes stainless steel in Canada. So either it comes from the States or China.
So how is that going to impact market in terms of sales? Or will it all balance out between exchange and tariffs?
We get asked the question a lot. Up until now, it's been almost positive, the tariffs, because for somebody to start a maple syrup farm in the U.S. from scratch, their costs have gone up substantially because of the tariffs. We still have some tariffs coming in. So, a product comes in, it's tariffed. When it goes back out, it's tariffed. Like it's the syrup as it stands now is CUSMA compliant. So there are no tariffs going down. So the maple syrup that is crossing bottled or in drums, as of today, there's no tariff implications. Tomorrow, who knows?
Who knows, yeah. The other thing is that there's been, with the quota system, particularly a push to expand into public lands because there's lots of trees that are on government-owned land, which, of course, the forestry industry has an interest in as well. It's not been easy, given the potential of maple syrup, to get into those public lands and exploit them.
Well, there's kind of two things that are going on. They will release enough land. It's just not, they want to block two regions, S3 and Bas-Saint-Laurent, from getting more crown land. They've come to some sort of a compromise, I guess, but I'm not sure what that's going to amount to. It changes by the day. They're willing to give a lot of land out from Mont Tremblant to Mont Laurier, but there's no people, but there's not a big forestry industry there as well. The government is giving big subsidies to people up north to ship their pulp and paper down to Domtar and Windsor. And so, they said, wow, maybe rather than do that, we'll crown land down. Environmentally speaking, I'm not the brightest light in the package, but it seems to me a tree that is being tapped and can be tapped for hundreds of years is going to capture more carbon. It's going to be better for the environment than putting it into maple flooring to sell to the States. The revenue that the government gets each year out of maple syrup as opposed to putting it out for cutting rights, is significantly more because you get it every year. When you go to the lower St. Lawrence, the trees don't grow as fast because of the weather. So every 30 or 40 years, you get a sum of money, but then it's done until 30 or 40 more years. Whereas if you put it out for maple syrup production, they get a revenue every year.
And you've been quoted as saying, if I'm still doing it, it's because I love maple syrup, and you've got your son and your family with you. What does the future look like?
Like every farmer, as we get older, we get the debt paid off, and you probably get a little bit smarter, a little more experience.
You think so, eh?
Well, I hope so. If you listen to my mom, maybe not, but as I say, we've had a lot of luck. My kids bought this other sugar bush, and we've had decent years since we bought it. This will be the 10th year. The installations are all new, and it's installed in the newer way of doing things. And we have vacuum sensors on every line, and we're just more productive that way. The last 2 years have been excellent. And as you produce more, your quota goes up. And right now the reserve being down substantially, even if you have over quota syrup, you're going to get paid for it. So cash flow wise, it just it makes sense. But our quota continually grows, and when it grows, it means more revenue. Even if the increases aren't all we hope for, sometimes when you add on, you have more quota, it makes quite a difference.
So being a producer of maple syrup, I assume you consume it?
Yes.
What's your favorite either recipe or way of consuming it?
The maple sugar and coffee is where we would consume.
Instead of your sugar, you put some maple syrup in?
No, we make granulated sugar. And, we don't eat breakfast at home a lot. So, but maple butter is,
Can't beat it.
Yeah, there's just nothing better. And we sell at a farmer's market, our lamb and syrup, and we seem to be getting more phone calls all the time.
Well, I put a squirt of maple syrup in my yogurt every morning. So there you go.
Over the course of a year, you use a hell of a lot more maple syrup squirting something every morning than having pancakes on, 4 Sundays a year. That's the trick. If you go and buy a recipe book that the PPAQ puts out, there's some pretty darn good stuff in there. The research and all those things, the promotion, like we're hooked in with the Canadians now, and we sponsored the Carnival in Quebec City, and, the visibility.
Well, it certainly is a delicious product. I wish you all the best with the coming season because it hasn't started yet. And thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you very much.
Jeff Blair of Verger Blair Orchards and his family have been producing maple syrup on the farm in Franklin for 5 generations up on the Covey Hill that runs parallel to the New York state border. They've gone from collecting sap in buckets in the bush with horses to vacuum systems that pull the sap directly to the tanks through pipelines. Jeff talks to Sarah Rennie, news editor for The Gleaner, about the family tradition of boiling sap, his sugar shack memories, tending the trees, and the difference between producing maple gold and apples.
So I've always sort of said you're like my go-to person when we talk about syrup because you seem to be able to read the trees, you've got a good handle on seasons, that sort of thing. I think the last 3 years, by mid-February, if you weren't tapped, you were missing your first run.
That's right. Yeah, February 10th, 2 years ago, we made our first syrup. So, and then last year, there was a little bit of an early run and then a long lull, and everybody got worried, including me. And it ended up the season went very late, and we had a good season.
Yeah, last year was
Very good year. Very good year.
It was a marathon, though.
Yeah, that's right.
Like,
Right to the end.
yeah, and then it kind of exploded into spring right away.
That's right. Yeah, well, we were spraying apple trees before we were done cleaning up the maple bush.
Yeah, but this year is, there's an awful lot of snow. It's cold.
Yeah, it's more like an old-fashioned winter where, we haven't had much ups and downs. It's been pretty steady cold for the last month. The trees will be very frozen. There's not a lot of frost in the ground, though, to hold them back. So it's going to take a good shot of warm weather to get them started running, and then away we go. As long as we get the cold nights, warm days, it should be good. But
So what do you mean when you say there's not a lot of frost in the ground? Because it's been so cold and there's
yeah,
snow.
but we've had snow on the ground from the very beginning, so the frost hasn't been able to go in the ground. The old timers always said too that when the snow is up around the trees, they won't run good until it gets melted back from the trunk of the tree. And the snow is like tight to the trees right now, so it takes a good warm shot to melt it back off of the trunk.
Okay, so we're looking at a later season.
Yeah, but in contrast, they always say early Easter, early spring. So it's that has often followed like last year was a very late Easter, so we had sugaring late. I don't know. There's all these old sayings if you go.
Yeah, there's all these old sayings. But I mean, the craft itself hasn't changed all that much. I mean, you guys have gas burners now. And
Yeah, it really hasn't changed a lot. There's still it still remains 100% the decision of Mother Nature as to whether it's going to be a good year or a bad year. You can ask me now, do I think it's going to be a good year? I have no idea. I always say, ask me at the end of April and I'll tell you.
so what's it like when you're boiling? Our neighbors are all making syrup. I know that it's boiling 24 hours a day. What's it like? It's just a run.
Yeah, it depends. Like if now with the vacuum systems, we can pull sap from the tree. Like it doesn't necessarily have to freeze every night. It can run for sometimes 48 hours steady if it doesn't freeze, because we're not harming the tree. It's just that it doesn't flow out naturally. It's being pulled out more. So yeah, sometimes we can go 48, 72 hours straight, but it's a short season, and that's what you got to do if you want to make money at it. You don't make money laying in bed. You got to roll.
Mm-hmm. Well, and of course the tanks have gotten bigger, that sort of thing. We're better at preserving the sap too.
Exactly. Yeah, and with reverse osmosis, you can handle a lot more sap. You're throwing out a lot of water before you start to boil. It used to be when I was a kid, if you had 10,000 gallons of sap, you had to boil 10,000 gallons of sap. Now you get 10,000 gallons of sap, you're boiling maybe 1,000 by the time it goes through the reverse osmosis machine. So.
Okay, so Mother Nature hasn't changed all that much. You can't control the season, but there's been a lot of technological changes then in syrup.
Yeah, exactly. And that has allowed producers to become more efficient and bigger. Like there used to never ever be a producer around here that tapped 30,000 taps. Now there's a lot. So it was just unthought of. But now, you can handle that many taps and more.
That's incredible. And I guess, and then tapping, that's the other side, is the preparation, the amount of work that actually goes into the season way before we ever get sun.
That's right. Yeah, we always start in the bush. Usually in December, we go through fixing lines, trimming off branches that have fallen on the line, stuff like that. And then we try to get started tapping mid-February or mid-January, and to try and be ready for, well, first week of February.
Mm-hmm.
This year we're behind a bit because we haven't had the tapping weather. Like if it's too cold, you can't tap, you'll crack the bark on the tree. So it's you have to wait till you have about -12 or warmer. And,
Wow.
this year there's been lots of days we tapped and then split wood for 3-4 days and back tapping.
Right. So when you are tapping, basically you're just moving, you're on the same trees, you're just moving the lines a little bit.
Yeah, we're moving that, yeah. Changing the placement of the holes, like up or down, right or left, so you get fresh wood.
Mm-hmm. And so you guys have several bushes, I guess, then.
Yeah. We have 3 bushes in all. We're tapping the one up on Covey Hill now, so it's the last one where the snow is the deepest.
Yeah, you were saying you're not on snowshoes yet, though.
No, I could almost be today, but I know once I start, I won't be off them, so I'm trying to delay it as much as possible.
Yeah, that must just...
Yeah, it's a long day. 9 hours on snowshoes is a long day.
Yeah, 9 hours is a long time in a bush for anybody.
Yeah, that's right.
So then when you get, everything is up, it's rolling, the sap is coming in, you guys have, I'm assuming you've gone through a couple of different evaporators now, different boilers.
Yes, we used to be wood. We went to oil. We were oil for 13 years. This year I'm back to wood again. So we put in a new evaporator. So we've gone back to the high efficiency wood evaporator.
Why would you do that?
Well, it's there was a program out from the Minister of Environment to get away from oil. I never was a big fan of oil evaporator. So we took advantage of the program, and the high efficiency evaporator uses very, very little wool. It's wood. It's a complete burn. There's no smoke goes out the stack. There's like almost zero emissions. So for the environment's sake and everything else, I decided we were going to switch back. So.
Wow. I guess, and there's no real, I mean, are there electric?
Yes, they have a new electric evaporator out that a lot of guys are putting in. That was the other option, but I've liked wood, I guess, because we were wood when I was a kid, and so we decided to go that route.
Does it change the taste at all?
I don't really think so. It's whatever boils, you know. It's I don't think it makes much difference whether it's wood or oil.
I mean, there's nothing, I don't think there's anything that smells better than walking into a boiler room.
True. Yeah, or even outside the sugar house from the steam. Yeah. Yeah,
because this is how many generations the farm now?
It would be my great-grandfather that started the farm. So, and Mike would be, and Michelle was, I think Mike and Michelle were about the 5th generation. My grandfather and great uncle, they used to be they originally started what's called Blair Brothers Register. That was what they worked together. And they actually had 10,000 taps back then, all on buckets, which was a lot for back then. It was, yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So they would have been going through the woods with horses at that point then?
Horses, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess
there was a lot of buckets to wash at the end of the season.
So I guess we've maybe lost a tiny bit of that, maybe the romantic traditional side of it with the buckets and.
Yeah. I think back to that a lot. You know, it's you miss it. You know, it was less hectic, but it was fun.
Yeah, because it's not that long ago. You would have been collecting sap when you were younger in buckets.
For sure. Yep.
With horses?
No, not horses.
Okay.
By the time I was there was tractors. But
okay.
Yeah. The old Ford tractors we used in the bush. Yeah. Because I remember in 71, that was the year of the big winter, all the snow. And they had the tractors couldn't go through the bush. They had open. They had Tully come in with bulldozers and make roads through the bush to to get through to gather the sap. They tapped with a big apple box, and they made a sleigh out of it with tin underneath it and pulled it with a skidoo through the bush with the buckets and everything and tapped that way. And then when we were gathering, the gathering tank was level with the snowbank. So you would pour down off the snowbank into the gathering tank. It was crazy.
Wow. I'm glad we don't see winters like that anymore.
And then when the snow all went, the buckets were like...
Yeah, taking them down must have been tricky. Well, and then of course there was the ice storm too, and that must have done a number on the trees.
That was very hard on them, for sure. They told us that our bush on Covey Hill, that was the worst up there. And it was the results after the government was evaluating each bush. And we had 87% crown loss up there. And they said the bush would never survive. And I mean, some of them didn't survive, but most of that bush, you can go through it now and you can never tell it's the same thing, this one here, these here. They just shot up new, and I mean, and that wasn't the first ice storm. I think, was there one in 65, I think it was, Dad said. And it was bad then too, and you could see the regrowth from that one, and then the one now. But I mean, it's hard.
Yeah, maple trees seem to be incredibly resilient.
Yeah, we did. I mean, for sure we lost some because some of them, like it let the water down into them and stuff. But they're amazing.
And I guess there's not much that sort of affects maple trees, except that we did have. Is it a worm or something a few years ago that was in our trees?
Yeah, we had the gypsy moth, which defoliated two of my bushes 2 years in a row. And the third year we sprayed with helicopters in the spring with a biological control and stopped them. But it was very, very hard on the maple bushes. So they completely defoliated and had to put out a second growth of leaves like in the same year, which were a lot smaller, so they didn't have the same photosynthesis. And so it was rough.
Yeah, I remember you telling me if you didn't get it under control by the third year, you'd lose trees.
That's right, yeah.
And so it wasn't just you, then a lot of the maple bushes around here were...
Yeah, it's kind of, gypsy moth it just all of a sudden will appear, and it can hit one bush, miss one bush. But unfortunately, it got most of ours. So.
Is that about the only thing that impacts trees? Like it's not like the elms and the.
Well, thank God, there's been nothing like the Dutch elm disease or the ash borer that has ever come to maples, because I don't know what we would do. And we have one maple bush that had maybe about a dozen ash trees left in it, and they were scattered all over the bush, and every one of them died. Like, I just found it so amazing how the borer managed to find those ash trees. It mixed them out, 30 acres of maples.
I can't imagine our region without its majestic maples.
Oh, that's it.
No. So I only have a couple more questions, but essentially, I think we've sort of touched on a lot of syrup, but maybe we could talk a little bit about the difference, because you said earlier apples are more predictable.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, you asked me if I think it's going to be a good syrup season. Well, I don't really know until it's over. Apples, well, after the flower season, we know we're going to have apples. It's always whether they're going to be, the quality they're going to be by fall, depending on hail or drought or whatever. But at least you're going to have a crop after May. Whereas maple, well, you have no idea what the crop's going to be.
I guess, and you have no idea how much time.
No. It takes the same amount of work to tap them and get ready, maybe a little less work during the season if it's a poor season, but the same amount of work to untap and clean everything up. So it's always better to have a good one. And I mean, the saying is that a good sugaring year, all the crops are going to be good. So, and that kind of stands true, but we'll see.
All right, so Farmer Phil wants to know, what is the difference between the colors of maple syrup and why? Maple syrup colors indicate when the sap was harvested during the season. Lighter golden syrup, early season, has a delicate, mild flavor with a hint of vanilla. Darker syrup, which comes in the later season, is more robust and caramel-like. All grade A syrup is equally thick, but they differ in flavor intensity and the best use in food, with lighter for toppings and darker for cooking. The key differences between the grades are that golden or delicate is the lightest color, mild and sweet flavor, best for drizzling on yogurt or ice cream. The amber/rich, sort of medium colored classic maple syrup is ideal for pancakes and more general use. And then darker, robust syrup is a deep amber color, has a strong flavor, and is great for baking, sauces, and glazes. Then you get the very dark, very strong ones, which is the darkest color. It has intense maple flavor and is often used for cooking and manufacturing. The colors differ due to seasonality, the flavor profile, lighter and darker, and nutritional density. Darker syrups often contain slightly higher concentrations of minerals and antioxidants. Lots more information at ppaq.ca, which is the Quebec Maple Syrup Producers Federation's website.
Laurie Ann Prevost began producing maple syrup in 2023 from the sugar bush surrounding her orchard in Hinchinbrook, Quebec. The syrup is delicious, but Laurie Ann is also known valley-wide for her processed maple products, including maple butter, sugar cones, and even cotton candy. Sarah Rennie stopped by for a taste.
Well, when we bought the farm, it was rented to someone else. So we had a tiny bit that we would keep some syrup for the kiosk. But in 2022, we built the shanty and we started production in 2023. So this will be our 4th year. So yeah, we're fairly new, and we're just 2 people. So when we set everything up, we wanted to do everything as efficiently as possible. So we have monitoring system in the bush, so we can track all the leaks. And we have an RO system to separate the water, because if not, we'd be boiling for hours and hours and hours.
So how many taps do you have?
We have just under 3,000 taps.
Okay, and is that how many the farm had, or did you guys got some during the lotteries, didn't you?
Yeah, we during the lottery we have potential for an extra 1,900, but we only tapped an extra 700. Because there's another 1,000 that it's hard to go get because it's a separate part of the orchard, the farm, and it would need a big investment to go get those taps in the back. So maybe future projects.
Okay, so they're there sort of as a reserve.
Yeah.
So how hard is it to actually get new taps?
I think you have to be lucky. Well, you apply, there's a lot of paperwork, and the system is either you apply for a set amount by, like, it goes by, there's brackets, or you do the lotto where you can apply and hope to get everything you ask for. That's more for bigger producers. When we applied, we got everything we wanted, but we were only applying for a small amount, so it was easy. Yeah, and then we had, you have a set amount of time to get the bush set up, so that's always a little more difficult, because then once you get accepted, you need the money and the time to get everything set up in time, or you lose your quota that you received.
And so how hard is it to actually transition a new bush, to start into a new set of trees? That mustn't be easy.
Well, you have to get the bush clean. We hired a forestry engineer to map out the bush and tell us what to cut out. And then you have to set up all the pipeline. And that, no matter what you do, you're always going to find ways that you could have done things better and more efficiently. But I think that's everyone. So it's a lot of time, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of money, but the syrup market seems to be good so far, so it's worth it.
Well, this year you had time, for sure, that we haven't had in the last few syrup seasons.
Yeah, it's we're getting kind of anxious to start now. It's getting late.
I was going to say, so there's a waiting game to start to boil in, in the last few years, especially in the last 3 or 4 years. Like, I think first run has been right around Valentine's Day.
I think 2 years ago, we started February 7th. And then we had like a 2-week break. But yeah, that was very early. So I think this is the latest that we've started, or haven't started, I should say. So yeah, we'll see. Hopefully the season is long. It's a late spring, not an early spring, so we can make some more syrup.
Yeah, I guess that kind of must weigh on you, though, the idea that we might just have one of those springs that just like comes and it's instant and you have a week of chaos. And
yeah, and there's nothing we can do about that, so we'll collect as much sap as we can and hope for the best.
But I guess it's not like it used to be either anymore, where you had to like collect your sap and then boil it right away.
Yeah, no, we well, here also we have everything that comes directly to the shanty, so we don't have to go collect anywhere. So there's less loss since there's no collecting and transferring. We have enough storage to store enough sap, so we can start the RO only once we have enough built up. And yeah, so we have a little leeway. But some days, there was one day last year we boiled twice in one day. It was running nonstop. We couldn't keep up.
Yeah, last year was a strange year too, because I think everybody was expecting that, because it started early, then it stopped, and then it was like a marathon year.
Yep. Yeah, it started early, it stopped, and then once it started, it just ran a lot. Well, it was still a fairly long season, but it was our best season so far out of our 3-4 seasons there. But yeah.
And then this year, there's a lot of snow out there still, even.
But that's good, because if it warms up quickly, at least the snow will keep the trees cold, insulated for longer, I'm hoping.
You guys, like you said, have to put things into place to make things a little bit easier when it's just 2 people.
Yeah, we have the monitoring system, so that helps us with, it reduces our workload a little bit, and that way we don't have to hire any outside helpers. We can track all the lines directly on our phones, and there's a computer screen in the shanty. We're even able to turn some valves on and off. We can control from a distance certain things. So if a line freezes, we can go turn things off. And there's settings too where it can turn off at a certain temperature or turn on or slow down. It can be preset up and controlled from a distance.
And then so this machine here that we're looking at, that separates out the water.
Yep.
So sap that's being boiled then is much more condensed.
Yep. So when a sap comes in, it's usually around 2%. And we concentrate to, I think, 17. So that goes into a tank upstairs, and then once we have enough, then we can start boiling.
So it significantly cuts your time down.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, some boil up to 30, which seems very high, but it's doable. So. And
then once you actually get it into the boiler, I guess that's when like all the technology just has to come back to like knowing what you're doing.
Yeah, it has to hit a certain temperature, and we still check it like manually as well. But yeah, the machines now are fairly smart in that department that they do a lot of the work to help with finishing the syrup.
So you guys do have some that goes into your quota, then it gets put into big barrels, it gets shipped off.
Yep. Yeah, we put everything to barrels and we ship to the Federation to fill our quota. And if we have extra, or even if we don't, we keep some to sell at the kiosk directly, because we do a lot of, we sell cans and we do a lot of transformation.
Among other things, you make just maple sugar.
Yeah, we do maple sugar. What else do I do? We do maple butter, maple taffy, the cones. I do cotton candy now, which is pretty cool. And we make, like the regular like caramels and little maple chunks, the candies, the lollipops, all kinds of little derived products from the maple syrup. Yeah, well, actually, now that we're waiting for the season to start, we're getting some products ready. So we have some ready ahead of time, because once we start boiling, well, then there's no time for anything. So we're trying to get some stuff done now.
Sarah also took some time to talk to Kim Lecoyer, who is a holistic nutrition consultant. Kim also has a small maple syrup operation at her home in Godmanchester, Quebec, and she thinks of maple syrup as a natural replacement for sugar, using it regularly in her cooking and baking.
Could you
tell me a little bit about why maybe it's a good idea to sort of look at syrup as maybe just as an alternative or as a complete replacement?
Yeah, for sure. So refined white sugar, so what most people recognize, and even worse, is that artificial sweeteners with that aspartame and that. Those are the products that I tell clients, you don't even send those to the food bank. So that's really not good stuff. But yeah, so I'm a big, I was going to say grow. We don't grow our syrup, but we produce. My husband has a very small evaporator, so we do some of our own syrup the old-fashioned way. But no, it's just a great sweetener. So there is a certain amount of mineral that comes with maple syrup. So it actually comes with a little bit of good stuff. I also love raw honey, but for the purpose of today, yeah, definitely maple syrup's it's good stuff.
And it's pretty versatile. Like it's not a pancake thing necessarily.
No, absolutely not. So we've switched. I don't use any white sugar anymore. So except for the hummingbird feeder. So maple syrup, yeah, totally. We use it in our coffee. I use it to sweeten salad dressings. I use it in stir fries just to balance things out. Wherever a little bit of sweetener is required, maple syrup is amazing. And it's just a little bit of a more healthy option. But I have a disclaimer, okay? I do, and I see this a lot in my line of work where the kind of that all or nothing mentality. So people think, okay, maple syrup is good. I can guzzle the stuff. So it's still a sugar, right? It still has that blood sugar impact. It's still going to mess with insulin levels. So of course it's still sugar, but it's just a slightly elevated, slightly. It's a more nourishing type of sweetener. So, yeah.
And of course it comes from sap. And so sap is sometimes also brought into people's diets. People are drinking sap.
So there's, and this is anecdotal, I'm not, but apparently oldies, so used to at the end of a long winter season where they wouldn't have had access to fresh vegetables and fresh produce like we do today, they would drink sap because it's so highly mineralized. It actually was kind of used as a purge or some kind of like a flush. So it would really loosen up the bowels, clear things out. And so when minerals, because we get so much of our nutrients from fresh vegetables and fruit and vegetables, that when those foods are in low supply, that sap, that was one of the first things that came out that came out of nature that was so nourishing. So they knew this, yeah. Yeah, which is pretty cool. So I just drink it right out of the bucket. So we still collect with buckets. It's a big job. We only have about 168 taps, and I'm talking about all of this, but this is really my husband's project and endeavor. I call the his maple syrup project his little red sports car because he just enjoys it. It's a hobby, but it's so fun. So after work, we go and we collect the sap with the bucket, out of the buckets, and I just drink it right out of the bucket.
Yeah, I've done that. It's certainly, sap is it's tasty.
It does. It has a little sweetness to it, and again, I know some people have way more experience, but different bushes have different, flavors and the level of sweetness and all that. But, yeah,
I imagine it has something to do with soil and those sorts of things too.
Yeah,
and what's in your
there's
soil.
a lot
but
to it, for sure. Yeah.
But no, we can just continue to talk about how good syrup tastes.
Yep.
But when it comes to sort of the nutritional value, then is it something that you are recommending to clients? Is that they do look at more natural sources of sugars? That it is helpful?
Oh my goodness, yes, 100%. I'm in the camp of, as close to the natural state as possible, regardless of what kind of food. So I'm not about eliminating any foods at all. And this is really, so whether it's gluten or red meat or dairy or any of those beautiful foods, it's about selecting them carefully. So sweeteners are a part of life. Nobody wants to take that out of their diet. So it's just about getting things as close to the natural state as possible. So maple syrup definitely fits the bill.
And I would imagine it's not a hard thing to bring up with clients. Then it's like you could drink syrup or you could use syrup.
For sure. Yeah. And most of my recipes. So there's always that sweet, salty sour balance to keep, just to make recipes good. So when, most recipes, whether you're looking at, a stir fry or salad dressing or there's always that balance.
So people could start to plan meals with an integration of syrup into them.
Totally, just incorporating it on a broader scale, just using it, like I said, wherever sweeteners is required. No, it doesn't have to be limited to just maples, cabane à sucre time. Definitely, no, absolutely not. And I've even played around. So, have you ever heard of kombucha?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I've even played around with fermenting sap to make a very mineralized kombucha, which that'll be a project for some other day. But and I think there are people that are doing this. So the uses for this are for syrup is anywhere that you can use a sweetener. And there are actual conversion tables. I don't have one in front of me, but I have it in one of my cookbooks. So if you need 1 cup of sugar for a recipe, you would replace and just cut the liquid down by a little bit or whatever. But it's absolutely a much more nutrient dense sweetening option. So and the flavor is so complex, right? Mm-hmm. It's a little more complex and just brings some more depth. And it's good stuff. Marinating meat, like we use it for all kinds of things. Marinating, and if you make iced tea or like whatever, you can just use syrup. So it's just getting into the habit.
I wonder too if it's part of like in this area, you see it more often. It's regularly heard. You go for coffee. Oh, and you want syrup in that? So I'm just curious too. Are people surprised when you tell them that they can be doing more?
Well, they're always really happy to hear that this is So my modus operandi is make healthy delicious. For healthier, better habits to stick, they have to be sustainable. It has to be delicious, because otherwise nobody's right. Like, and it's a little too often people associate better health or better habits with dry, tasteless, bland, bored. Like, no, I can't. It's so we're going for the win-win, right? And you mentioned even the cabane à sucre meal, like. Let's just use better quality flour to make those pancakes. Let's just throw a little more vegetables into the baked beans. And I actually have recipes that I put together for, just up-leveling some of our existing traditional recipes. So that's the big part of my coaching is again, just making all of the things that we're working on sustainable, lovely, doable, long-term. Right? So sugar comes into that, or I shouldn't say sweeteners come into that, right? So are people surprised? I think we're so lucky in the Valley here to have access to so many of these local, beautiful foods. And we don't realize how rich we are sometimes with having all of this local goodness. Produce that's raised naturally and just the way it's supposed to be.
Definitely. It's very obvious that we're very lucky.
And, as much on the ethical level as the nutritional level, like it has this impact across the board. It's not just bragging rights. It really does matter how food is grown and honored, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we are really lucky around here.
To close up this episode, back to Farmer Phil's question about peanut butter. Well, I don't usually put maple syrup and peanut butter together, but I was inspired by Farmer Phil to try it out, and it was delicious, of course. But the real question is, why does the peanut butter thicken instead of thinning out with the syrup? Science to the rescue. Mixing maple syrup and peanut butter together causes the mixture to thicken because the liquid syrup hydrates the proteins in the peanut butter, causing them to absorb the moisture and swell and then bond together. This reaction turns the creamy paste into a stiffer, clumpier texture due to increased viscosity, similar to how water interacts with peanut butter powder. Who knew? In case you want more details, there's more. YouTube is full of maple syrup and peanut butter videos. Which type of maple syrup goes best on peanut butter? That's for you to try out as the 2026 maple season unfolds. But for now, go enjoy some syrup, try some taffy on the snow, and have a great sugar season. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Farm to Food podcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors for helping to bring this initiative to life. The Livestock Breeders Association for our studio facilities at the Expo Ormstown Fairgrounds, and Quinn Farm in Notre-Dame de Ile-Perrot for promotional support.
We'd also like to thank the Community Media Strategic Support Fund and the Government of Canada for their financial support, as well as the PPAQ program for their contribution to equip the podcast studio.
This program is made possible by the volunteer directors on the board of the Chateauguay Valley Community Information Services, a nonprofit social enterprise with charitable status. We would love your support to keep this podcast going. Donations can be made at farmtofood.ca, and we can issue tax receipts for donations over $25.
And, of course, our thanks to Farmer Phil, who opened up the show. Be sure to join us in 2 weeks for the next Farm to Food podcast episode. We'll have more interesting stories about farming and food from the land to your kitchen table. Thanks for listening.